Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Yogah karmasu kaushalam.
Hello students, my name is Ishan Shinolekar and today we will be discussing about Theory of Supply Part 1. Let us start with the objectives of the session, where we are going to learn or start with an introduction to supply theory and then learn concept of definition of supply, the law of supply and the factors affecting supply. So let us start with the introduction to the supply theory. Supply is the counterpart of demand in market analysis and represents the producer's side of the market equation. While demand focuses on what consumers want to buy, supply examines what producers are willing and able to offer for sale in the market. The study of supply theory helps us understand how businesses make production decisions, how markets determine prices and how various factors influence the availability of goods and services. Supply analysis is crucial for understanding market dynamics and business strategy. Just as consumer behavior drives demand, producer behavior drives supply. Producers aim to maximize profits while consumers aim to maximize satisfaction, and these different objectives create the interactions we observe in markets. Let us look at the historical development of supply for broader perspective. The theory of supply developed alongside demand theory as economists sought to understand how markets function. Early economists like Adam Smith recognized that both buyers and sellers play essential roles in determining market outcomes. Classical economists such as David Ricardo and later Alfred Marshall formalized supply analysis, developing concepts like supply curve and market equilibrium. These foundational ideas remain central to modern economic analysis. The evolution of supply theory paralleled developments in production theory, cost analysis and firm behavior, creating an integrated framework for understanding how producers make decisions in competitive markets. Let us look at the importance of supply in business decision making. So, supply theory provides crucial insights for business planning and strategy. Understanding supply factors helps managers make decisions about production levels, pricing strategies, capacity planning and market entry timing. The theory explains how production costs, technology changes and market conditions affect optimal business decisions. It helps predict how competitors might respond to market changes and how industry supply might evolve over time. For entrepreneurs and business students, supply theory provides essential tools for evaluating business opportunities, understanding industry dynamics, and developing competitive strategies. Connection to other economic concepts is also done in the entire theory of supply. Basically, supply theory connects closely with production theory, examining how firms transform inputs into output. It also links with cost theory, showing how production costs influence supply decisions. The interaction between supply and demand determines market prices and quantities. Market supply theory, essential for understanding market equilibrium and price formation, is crucial. This interaction explains how markets coordinate the activities of millions of independent producers and consumers. Supply analysis also connects with international trade theory, examining how countries specialize in producing goods where they have comparative advantages, and with economic growth theory, explaining how increased productive capacities expand economic possibilities. Now let us look at the concept and definition of supply broadly. Let us start with the economic definition of supply. Supply refers to the quantity of good or service that producers are willing and able to offer at sale at various prices during a specific time period. This definition emphasizes several key elements that distinguish supply from mere production or inventory. Willingness to supply means producers must want to sell their output rather than keeping it for other purposes. Ability to supply means producers must have the necessary resources, technology and capacity to produce the goods. The time dimension is crucial because supply conditions can change over time as technology improves, costs change and market conditions evolve. Supply is always defined for a specific period of time, whether daily, monthly or annually. Let us now look at the key elements of supply. Production capacity represents the physical ability to produce goods and services. This includes factors like factory size, machinery capability, skilled labor availability and raw material access. Capacity constraints limit how much producers can supply even when prices are attractive. Willingness to sell reflects producers' motivation to bring goods to market rather than using them internally or holding them for future sale. This willingness depends on current prices relative to expected future prices and alternative uses for the output. Time period is essential because supply response differs between short-term and long-term periods. Producers can adjust output more easily over longer time periods as they can change production capacity, hire more workers or adopt new technologies. Market structures influence supply behavior because competitive conditions affect how producers respond to price signals. Perfect competition creates different supply incentives than monopoly or oligopoly market structures. Now let us look at supply versus stock versus production. Understanding the differences between supply, stock and production is crucial for clear economic analysis. Stock refers to the total quantity of goods available at a particular moment regardless of whether they are offered for sale or not. Production represents the process of creating goods and services over a period of time. While production creates the goods that might eventually be supplied in the market, not all production immediately becomes supply. Supply specifically refers to the portion of available goods that producers choose to offer for sale at current market prices. A farmer might have produced a large wheat harvest production and have significant quantity stored, which is stock, but supply only the portion they are willing to sell at current prices. Let us look at individual versus market supply. Individual supply refers to the quantity that a single producer or firm is willing to supply at various prices. This reflects the specific costs, capabilities and circumstances of that particular producer. Market supply aggregates the individual supply decisions of all producers in the market and it represents the total quantity that all producers together are willing to supply at each possible price level. Understanding the distinction helps explain how individual business decisions combine to create market level outcomes and how changes in industry structure affect overall market supply. Let us now look at supply as a flow concept. So, supply is a flow concept, meaning it represents a rate of production or sales over time rather than stock of goods at a particular moment. We speak of supplying 100 units per month rather than having 100 units available. This flow characteristic distinguishes supply from inventory or stock. A company might have large inventories but still have low supply if they are reluctant to sell at current prices, perhaps expecting better prices in the future. The flow nature of supply also explains why supply can be sustained over time through continued production, unlike stocks which are depleted through sales unless they are replenished. Now let us look at the law of supply. Let us understand the statement of the law of supply. The law of supply states that other things remaining constant, the quantity supplied of a good increases when prices rise and decreases when price falls. This creates a positive relationship between price and quantity supplied, opposite to negative relationship in the law of demand. This fundamental economic principle explains why supply curves typically slope upward from left to right. Higher prices provide greater incentives for production, encouraging producers to supply more goods in the market. The law reflects rational producer behavior. Businesses naturally want to produce more when they can sell at a higher price and less when the prices are low. This response helps markets self-regulate and adjust to changing conditions. Let us look at the assumptions to this law of supply. The law of supply assumes that all other factors affecting supply remain constant during the analysis. These include production costs, technology levels, input prices, producer expectations, and government policies. It also assumes that producers are rational profit maximizers who respond predictably to price incentives. Producers are assumed to have the flexibility to adjust output levels in response to price changes. The law assumes competitive market conditions where individual producers are price takers rather than price setters. In monopolistic situations, the relationship between price and quantity supplied might be more complex. Let us look at the economic reasoning behind law of supply. First is the profit motive. Higher prices generally mean higher profits per unit sold, encouraging producers to increase output and capture these profits. Lower prices reduce profit margins, making increased production less attractive. And cost considerations. Producing large quantities often involve rising marginal costs as firms push against capacity constraints or must use less efficient production methods. Higher prices are needed to justify these higher costs. Higher prices attract new producers to enter the market, increasing total market supply. Lower prices may force some producers out of the market and exit the market, reducing the total supply. Existing producers may increase capacity utilization when prices rise, running factories longer hours or bridging idle capacity back into production. Let us look at some real world example for further clarity. Considering the housing construction industry, when property prices rise significantly, construction companies increase building activity to take advantage of higher profit margins. More builders enter the market and existing companies start new projects. In agriculture, farmers respond to higher crop prices by planting more acres, using more intensive farming methods, or switching from less profitable crops to more profitable ones. This increased production represents law of supply in action. The ride-sharing industry provides a modern example. When demand increases and prices surge, more drivers come online to take advantage of higher earnings, increasing the supply of rides available. Now let us try and understand what are the exceptions to the law of supply. Some goods have backward bending supply curves where higher prices can actually reduce quantity supplied. This can occur with labor supply when workers choose more leisure time as wages increase, preferring free time over additional income. Artistic goods might have exceptions where higher prices don't increase supply because production is limited by creativity or artistic inspiration rather than economic incentives. A famous painter cannot simply produce more masterpieces because prices rise. Rare collectibles or antiques have fixed supplies that cannot increase regardless of price. Archaeological artifacts or historical items have perfectly inelastic supply because no new production is possible. Perfectly inelastic means there is no response. Natural resource extinction might face decreasing supply at very high extraction levels due to depletion or environmental constraints, creating situations where higher prices do not significantly increase output. Now let us look at the fourth and the last aspect of this session, that is factors affecting supply. First is cost of production. Production costs are perhaps the most important factor affecting supply decisions. When input costs like raw materials, labor or energy decrease, producers can supply more goods at any given price level because their profit margins improve. Rising production costs have the opposite effect, forcing producers to reduce supply at existing price levels or requiring higher prices to maintain previous supply level. Cost changes can shift the entire supply curve rather than causing movement along the existing curves. Different types of costs affect supply in various ways. Fixed costs influence long-term supply decisions, while variable costs affect short-term supply or production adjustments. Understanding the cost relationship helps predict supply responses. Next is technology and innovation. Technological improvements typically increase supply by making production more efficient, reducing costs per unit, or enabling entirely new production methods. Better technology allows producers to supply more goods at lower costs. Automation, improved machinery, better production processes, and innovation in materials or methods all contribute to increased supply capability. The technological factors often drive long-term increases in market supply. The pace of technological change varies across industries, with some sectors experiencing rapid innovation while others change slowly. This creates different supply dynamics in different markets. Then input prices and availability also matter. The price and availability of inputs like raw materials, labor and capital equipment directly affect production costs and supply capabilities. When input price rise, production becomes more expensive, typically reducing the supply. Input availability can be as important as price. Even if producers are willing to pay for materials, shortage of key inputs can limit production capacity and reduce supply. Long-term contracts, strategic sourcing and vertical integration are business strategies that might help manage input price and availability risk, stabilizing supply capabilities. Government policies and regulations also have a significant impact. Government policies significantly influence supply through taxes, subsidies, regulations and licensing requirements. Higher taxes on production increase costs and reduce supply, while subsidies have opposite effect. Environmental regulations, safety standards and quality requirements can increase production costs but might also improve product quality and consumer acceptance. The net effect of supply depends on specific regulations and industry characteristics. Trade policies, import restrictions and export incentives also affect supply by influencing input costs and market access. These policies can dramatically alter supply conditions in affected industries. Then the next very important point is producer expectations. Producer expectations about future prices, costs and market conditions significantly influence current supply decisions. If producers expect prices to rise in the future, they might reduce current supply to save output more for better profitable future scenarios by sales. Expectations about technological changes, regulatory changes or competitive conditions also affect supply planning. Producers might increase current supply if they expect future production to become more difficult or less profitable. Uncertainty about future conditions can reduce supply as producers become more cautious about expanding production or entering new markets. Then we have number of suppliers as well. The number of suppliers or the number of firms in an industry directly affects total market supply. More competitors generally mean higher total supply, while industry consolidations typically reduces supply competition. Barriers to entry influence how quickly new suppliers can enter profitable markets. Low barriers allow rapid supply increases when prices rise, while high barriers limit supply responsiveness. Exit barriers also matter. Industries where firms can easily exit will see supply fall quickly when conditions deteriorate, while exit barriers maintain supply even when profitability declines. So, overall, if we look at the conclusion, then the theory of supply explains how producers decide the quantity of goods and services to offer in the market, emphasizing the positive relationship between price and quantity supplied under normal conditions. It highlights that supply is influenced not just by price but also production costs, technology input, availability, government policies, market structure, and producer expectations. Understanding supply is essential for predicting market behavior, making business decisions, and so on. Further analyzing how supply intersects with demand to determine market equilibrium is also crucial. This knowledge equips businesses and policymakers to respond effectively to changing economic conditions and develop strategies for sustainable production and growth. Particularly for business administration students, a clarity on the concept of supply and the factors affecting it is extremely crucial, because in this dynamic changing environment, all the factors that affect supply will be taken into consideration simultaneously, and then you will be predicting how things are going to change for the business. I hope you understood and enjoyed the session. Thank you so much.